Hello friends, welcome to today's lecture on common brain lesions. If you haven't watched my first video on common brain lesions, I'll share with you the link in the description below. Do have a watch. Starting with lesion in dominant parietal cortex. Now how to know whether which part of the parietal cortex is dominant? This is as if a person is right-handed, then his dominant parietal cortex will be the left one, and usually 90 to 80% of the patients are right-handed, so the dominant parietal cortex is considered the left parietal cortex. Whereas if the patient is left-handed, then the dominant parietal cortex will be right. So this lesions is seen in the case of Gertzmann syndrome. Now Gertzmann syndrome is a rare disorder which is characterized by the loss of four specific neurological functions. First is dysgraphia or agraphia, which means inability to write. Second is acalculia, that is the loss of the ability to do mathematics. Third is finger agnosia, that is the inability to identify one's own or another's finger. And fourth one is left-right disorientation, that is the inability to make the distinction between the right and left side of the body. Next is lesion in non-dominant parietal cortex. For example, if the patient is right-handed, then the non-dominant parietal cortex will be the right parietal cortex. And in this lesion actually leads to hemispatial neglect. This is a condition in which a patient becomes unable to process and perceive stimuli on one side of the body or environment. He or she completely neglects one side of the body. For example, in this case, a woman arrives with hair or makeup half done and a sock or shoe on only the left foot. She can only draw half a clock. Where is her brain lesion? So in this condition, the woman is only active on her left part. She's only doing her makeup or hair, or she's wearing shoes and socks on only the left foot. And even in the picture we can see that she is drawing a clock that is only half a side. So this condition actually demonstrates hemispatial neglect, and this is seen in the case of lesion in non-dominant parietal cortex, and it usually results in agnosia of the contralateral side of the world. Agnosia is the word which describes the patient's inability to recognize and identify objects or persons. Next is subthalamic nucleus lesion. It leads to contralateral hemibalismus. So if it means that if there will be right side of subthalamic nucleus lesion, then the left side of the body will suffer from hemibalismus. What is hemibalismus? Hemibalismus is a hyperkinetic involuntary movement disorder. It is characterized by intermittent, sudden, violent, involuntary, flinging or ballistic high amplitude movements involving the ipsilateral arm and leg, caused by dysfunction in the central nervous system of the contralateral side. Now I will suggest you all to see the hemibalismus movement disorder in YouTube, so that you will be clear that how this movement is like. And now what is the subthalamic nucleus? It is actually a small lens shaped nucleus. It's a small lens shaped nucleus. This green color actually indicates subthalamic nucleus, and this is located ventral to the thalamus. These are the thalamus and they are ventrally located to the thalamus, and they are the part of the basal ganglia. They are one of the four subcortical nuclei of the basal ganglia. Now let us see a clinical scenario. In this, a 64-year-old woman comes to his physician because of recurrent headaches for the past few months. A CT scan shows multiple enhancing lesions in the brain suggestive of metastasis The largest lesion is found in the area of the left subthalamic nucleus. So lesion is in the left subthalamic nucleus. Which of the following features would likely be caused by this lesion? So what will be the answer? The answer will of course be on the right side, because the left side of the subthalamic nucleus have been damaged. Now what does the subthalamic nucleus leads to? Contralateral hemibalismus, which means it will be uncontrollable flaying of the right arm and leg. So the answer will be B. Now the next is bilateral hippocampus lesion. Hippocampus is a complex brain structure which is embedded deep into the temporal lobe. It has a major role in learning and memory. Damage to this causes anterograde amnesia, that is the inability to make new memories. Do remember this, that the lesion of the hippocampus causes anterograde amnesia. Now, in this case, we see that after a car accident with CNS trauma, a patient cannot recall anything that occurred from that day onward. What type of amnesia is this? This is suggestive of anterograde amnesia that could be due to lesion in the hippocampus. Now, the next case says that a 44-year-old alcoholic man comes to the emergency department exhibiting anterograde amnesia and confabulation. What is the diagnosis? So here also there is the case of anterograde amnesia, but there are another key points related to them, like alcoholic man, confabulation. So this is the case of Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Let us learn about this in the next slide. Now, the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome is actually caused by bilateral mammillary bodies lesion. So, the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome presents with confusion, ataxia, nystagmus, ophthalmoplegia, memory loss that could be anterograde and retrograde amnesia, confabulation, and personality changes. Ataxia means the disorder that affect the coordination and balance of the patient, whereas ophthalmoplegia is the paralysis or weakness of the eye muscles, and confabulation refers to the production or creation of false memory. So this is actually also known as true lying or honest lying of the patient. Please to remember this key points related to Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, that it leads to confusion, ataxia, nystagmus, ophthalmoplegia, memory loss, confabulations, and personality changes. Now, this Wernicke problems come in a Canno-Beer. Canno-Beer is a mnemonic for remembering this key points. For example, C stands for confusion, A stands for ataxia, N stands for nystagmus, and O stands for ophthalmoplegia. C could also be confabulation. It's better to remember confabulation than confusion. So C for confabulation, A for ataxia, N for nystagmus, and O for ophthalmoplegia. And what does the Beer means? That it is mostly seen in the patients of alcohol intake. So mostly the alcoholic individuals suffer from Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, and these are also associated with other conditions like thiamine deficiency, that is vitamin B1 deficiency. Next is bilateral lesion in amygdala. What does it leads to? It leads to Kluver-Bucy syndrome. What is it? It is the syndrome that causes the individual to have some inappropriate behavior. For example, the patient eats a lot, which is known as hyperphagia, and the patient or individual put objects in their mouth and engage in inappropriate sexual behavior. So there is hyperorality, which is putting any object in their mouth, and hypersexuality, where there is inappropriate sexual behavior, and hyperphagia means eating a lot. So this 3 is the key finding in the cases of patients suffering from Kluver-Bucy syndrome. And we have seen that this is usually caused due to HSV-1 encephalitis. This is herpes simplex virus 1 that causes encephalitis that can lead to Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Now, what is amygdala? Amygdala is a interrogative center for emotions, emotional behavior and motivation. So, any lesion in amygdala will actually result in disinhibited behavior, and in Kluver-Bucy syndrome it presents with hyperphagia, hypersexuality and hyperorality. Please do remember this. Now let us see a case scenario. A 55-year-old man is brought to the physician by his wife because of abnormal behavior for the past 3 weeks. The symptoms started after he was released from the hospital, where he was treated for herpes simplex encephalitis. His wife says that he has been eating increasing volumes of food and recently started putting non-food items in his mouth and licking objects in the house. When they are home, he often rubs his genitals on furniture, and he also began touching his genitals and masturbating in public. The patient appears docile. He is 185 centimeter tall and weighs 132 kg. BMI is 38 kg per meter square. He is oriented to person but not to time or place. Neurological examination shows the ability to follow motor commands but an inability to name objects. The patient's symptoms are most likely caused by damage to which of the following structures? Pause the video and think of the answer. This case simply demonstrates the syndrome of Kluver-Bucy, and the key points which suggest that this is the diagnosis for Kluver-Bucy is first being herpes simplex encephalitis, second the person being eating a lot, which means hyperphagia, then the person putting non-food items in his mouth and leaking objects in the house means hyperorality. Then also he rubs his genitals on furniture and masturbating in public, all result in indicating hypersexuality. And this 4 suggests that the patient is suffering from Kluver-Bucy syndrome, that is due to lesion in the amygdala. So the answer to this question will be B, amygdala. Next is lesion in reticular activating system. Now, what is the reticular activating system? It is a network of neurons which is located in the brainstem that project anteriorly to the hypothalamus to mediate behavior, as well as it also projects posteriorly to the thalamus and directly to the cortex for activation of awake desynchronized cortical EEG patterns. So, the lesion in reticular activating system leads to reduced levels of arousal and wakefulness, and this actually causes coma. And a coma is a state of unconsciousness where a person is unresponsive and cannot be woken. So any lesion to the reticular activating system leads to coma. Next is lesion in cerebellar hemisphere. The cerebellum is important for making postural adjustments in order to maintain balance. So any lesion in cerebellar hemisphere will lead to intention tremor, limb ataxia and loss of balance. And the damage to the cerebellum causes ipsilateral deficits. That is, as it is opposite to the cortical damage or to the cerebral damage, that in the cases of any cerebral damage, the contralateral side is affected. But in the case of cerebellum, the ipsilateral side is affected. For example, if the right cerebellum will have the lesion, then the right side of the limbs will have ataxia and will suffer from tremor, and there will be the loss of balance in the right side only. And it is considered that in cerebral hemisphere lesions, the patient fall towards side of lesion. That is what is meant by ipsilateral deficits. Now here is a case scenario in which a 77-year-old man comes to the emergency department because of gait instability and several falls that began 4 hours ago. He has a history of hypertension and prior stroke. On examination, finger to nose testing reveals that he overshoots and undershoots with his right arm. He is also clumsy with right heel to shin testing. He leans to the right when walking and is mildly unsteady. Strength testing is normal. CT scan of the head shows no acute hemorrhages. Which of the following findings would most likely be seen on MRI? Pause the video and think of the answer. This patient suffers from gait instability and several falls. Also, the finger to nose testing reveals that there is lesion or tremors and ataxia in the right arm because of overshooting and undershooting of the patient with his right arm, and he is also clumsy with his right heel to shin testing. So this all indicates that the right side of the body is suffering from ataxia, tremor and gait instability. So the which of the following finding would most likely be seen on MRI will be the right cerebral hemisphere infarct, because the ipsilateral side of the cerebellar lesion leads to tremor, intention tremor, gait instability and falls. Now let us start with cerebellar vermis lesion. Now, in the previous slide, we have studied about the cerebellar hemispheres lesion. Now, this slide will be about the cerebellar vermis lesion. Now, in this picture, we can see that the cerebellar hemispheres are laterally located, whereas the vermis is centrally located. So, the cerebellar hemispheres being laterally located affect the laterally located limbs of our body, whereas the vermis being centrally located affects the central body, that is the trunk of our body is affected in the case of cerebellar vermis lesion, and the patient or individual thus suffers from truncal ataxia that includes wide-based drunken cellular gait, nystagmus and dysarthria. Whereas in cerebellar hemispheres, we have seen that the patient suffers from ataxia or intention tremor in the limbs that are laterally located. So cerebellar hemispheres laterally located affect lateral limbs, whereas the vermis being centrally located affects the central body or the trunk. This is very much important. Please remember this. And the degeneration of the cerebellar vermis is associated with chronic alcohol use. Now let us see about red nucleus or midbrain lesions. So the first is decorticate flexure posturing. In this, the lesion is above red nucleus. This is important to be remembered, that if the lesion is above red nucleus, the patient presents with flexion of upper extremities and extension of lower extremities. Whereas if lesion is at or below the red nucleus, then the patient presents with decerebrate or extensor posturing, where there is extension of both the upper and lower extremities. So in the decorticate or flexor posturing, the lesion is above red nucleus and it presents with flexion of the upper extremities, whereas extension of the lower extremities. Whereas in decerebrate extensor posturing, there is lesion at or below the red nucleus and it presents with extension of both the upper and lower extremities. We have there is an important point that there is worse prognosis with decerebrate posturing. So in this too, the decerebrate posturing is the worst to be prognosed. Now this picture demonstrates the decorticate rigidity and decerebrate rigidity. So in the decorticate rigidity, we can see that the upper extremities are flexed, whereas the lower extremity is extended. Now how to remember this? There is a mnemonic that in decorticate posturing, your hands are near the core. Near the core means near the heart, as we can see from this picture. So decorticate. So from decorticate core, we can remember that the core is that the hands will be near the core or heart, and whereas in decerebrate there will be the opposite case where there will be extension of both the upper and lower limbs. Now this slide presents to you all with a short quiz. Do these questions yourself as a flash quiz and revise your knowledge. Do share your answers in the comment section. Please do share your answers in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please do click like icon, or else please do dislike, because your review means a lot. Also, you can see my endocrine videos. I'll share the link in the description below. Lastly, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates.